Offenders Day of Release from Detention Bill, not amended in the Public Bill Committee, to be considered.
No amendments on consideration. Third reading what day? Member in charge, Simon Fell.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the Offenders Day of Release from Detention Bill now read for a third time. Before I begin, Mr Deputy Speaker, welcome to your place. I'd like to thank all of those who contributed in the debates and at committee stage for this bill to date. So far I can report that we've received broad support from colleagues from across the House, whether on these benches from the SNP and the Liberal Democrats, although that is not apparent right now, and also from our colleagues on the opposition benches too. I hope that approach will continue through the debate today and, if we are successful, when it goes into the Lords as well. Mr Deputy Speaker, being released from prison on a Friday presents a unique challenge for offenders who want to change their lives and turn back on crime. Friday releases can be fraught with practical challenges that derail this goal. This bill seeks to change that. Approximately a third of all releases currently fall on a Friday, and like release on any other weekday, many of those released will need to access essential support services such as local authority housing, substance misuse support, or even mental health services. However, on a Friday, there is a unique race against the clock to get those services before they close for the day. Many of them close early and then they shut for the weekend. Many people are released not that close to their homes, so they have to navigate their way to those services in a very narrow window of opportunity with one eye on the clock, knowing the cliff edge of the weekend is present. It is a daunting challenge for them. If you'll indulge me, I'll give you an example of why this matters. David Dunn wrote to me. He's a director of a charity called Release Mates. They're a group of prison leavers in long-term recovery from addiction themselves who recognise the need for support for men and women in the immediate hours following their release from custody. As David told me, Release Mates is waiting at the prison gate for a prison leaver, ensuring that they have food and clothes. They take them for breakfast, they accompany them to the mandatory day of release probation appointment, then to the job centre to ensure that the prisoner has the funds to survive. They then accompany the prison leaver to the local police station where they're required to report as part of a court order. Whenever possible, they try and link prison leavers in with drug and alcohol services, mental health support. For female prisoners, that's often a more complex process because they sometimes need to require to attend children's service appointments on the same day as well. David goes on that our experience is that the job that we do with prison leavers is significantly more difficult on a Friday. We're often required to find emergency accommodation for prison leavers, which on the other days of the week is difficult, but on Fridays is almost impossible. The weekend closure of drug and alcohol services regularly sees addicted prison leavers on opiate substitute medication without a prescription after a Friday release, inevitably leading to a relapse of Class A drug use. Without wishing to be critical of the probation service, they can offer very little help after noon on a Friday. Sometimes we're simply unable to complete all the appointments which a prison leaver is required to attend in one day. If that day is a Friday, a vulnerable person is often left to fend for themselves for 3 days without receiving help. I do not like to think of the chances that a prison leaver being released on a Friday has without the kind of support that we offer. And it's that final point of David's that this bill seeks to answer. Mr Deputy Speaker, failure to access vital support can increase an offender's likelihood of reoffending. We know that the reoffending rate for adults released on a Friday is higher than for any other day of the week, and that those without stable accommodation on release are almost 50% more likely to reoffend. Mr Deputy Speaker, by removing those barriers that a Friday release can bring, we can ensure that prison leavers have a better chance to access the support they need to reintegrate into the community so that victims and the public are protected. Currently, the law mandates that offenders due to be released on Saturday, Sunday or a bank or public holiday must be released on the preceding day, providing it's a working day. While this avoids releases on days when services are completely closed, the result is a bunching of releases on Friday, with almost double the number of any other day of the week. This bill will amend that law to provide the Secretary of State for Justice a discretionary power to bring forward the release date of an offender by up to 2 eligible working days where that release falls on a Friday or the day before a public or bank holiday. In practical terms, this gives that power to a prison governor, director or appropriate equivalent official in a youth establishment to apply the policy to bring forward an individual's release date. Evidence suggests that a Friday release day has a disproportionate impact on those with complex needs, those who may have greater distances to travel once they're released, or those with substance misuse or mental health needs. Such a power will promote law-abiding reintegration into society by ensuring those leaving custody can access the support services that they need on release.
Will you give way?
Of course I will.
To my honourable friend for giving way. He's making a powerful speech, and I entirely agree with him for the necessity of this bill. In fact, seeing the Shadow Minister in his place reminds me of many moons ago when I chaired the Crime and Disorder Reduction Partnership in Hammersmith and Fulham, and we saw on a weekly basis the problem of prisoners being released from all over the country, but particularly Wormwood Scrubs, not being able to access particularly housing, and therefore finding themselves in a very difficult place. So can I congratulate him on bringing forward this bill? We agree with the housing element is in particular key to ensuring that those leaving prison are able to get straight back into a good pattern as opposed to potentially falling back into whichever crime got them into prison in the first place.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. He is absolutely right. Accommodation is the key to this, and I know from speaking to my right honourable friend, the Minister, this is part of the puzzle which the Ministry of Justice is really trying to bear down on now. Ending Friday releases for vulnerable people is part of the challenge we face, but actually gaining access to bank accounts, mobile phones, so you can register for services like universal credit, and having stable accommodation is absolutely essential to helping people as they are released. Like adults, children are more likely to be released on a Friday than any other day as well. In addition to their inherent vulnerability as children, under 18s leaving custody have multiple, often complex needs, and a Friday release may mean them going 2 or even 3 days without meaningful contact with support services when they're at their most vulnerable. This is why this bill applies to both adults and children sentenced to detention and will ensure the same provisions exist across the youth estate. Evidence shows that if someone has the basics in place that they need upon their resettlement, they are far less likely to reoffend. This House has an opportunity to provide offenders with vital extra time to meet their probation officer, youth justice worker and access support services such as healthcare ahead of the weekend, helping to cut crime and ultimately making our streets safer. The fact is, Mr Speaker, that many people released from prison, Mr Deputy Speaker, I apologise, that many people released from prison, especially on Fridays, are almost set up to fail from the moment they set foot off the prison estate. If we support people as they come out of prison, we can play a key role in reducing the significant societal and individual costs of reoffending, leading to fewer victims of crime and fewer communities dealing with its impact. This bill is an important step towards doing that, and I sincerely hope that the House will agree that by making the simple change that it proposes, varying the date of release for vulnerable people by up to 48 hours, we can relieve that time pressure, we can take away that cliff edge, and we can give people the best opportunity to make a fresh start. If we're serious about justice, if we're serious about helping people and helping them to rebuild stable and rewarding lives, if we're interested in relieving prison capacity to improve outcomes and reducing reoffending, passing this bill is an important step in the right direction. And I'm drawing to a close, Mr Deputy Speaker, but sometimes it feels in this place we talk a different language to the world outside. And it feels very different to the people we represent. But this bill has helped remind me that this isn't the case. After second reading, my office in Barrow got a phone call from a serving prisoner, Gary, who'd watched the proceedings on Parliament TV. He did better than many of the staff in my office. He's due for release on Friday in August, on a bank holiday weekend. Understandably, he is concerned about exactly the issue that this bill seeks to address, being stranded without support or the ability to help himself for 3 days. It is no exaggeration to say that there are hundreds of Garys out there, all with the same concern, all of whom want a fair chance to stand on their own 2 feet and start a new life on release. By passing this bill, I hope that we will give them that chance. It is the very least we can do. Mr Deputy Speaker, I hope that I've addressed as fully as possible the aims of this bill and the positive impact that it will have. I'm very proud to present this bill to the House for its third reading. In many ways, it offers just a small change, but it is a change that will have a great and lasting impact for so many people leaving custody. I firmly believe that it is the right thing for us to do, and I hope that the House will join me in support of it.
Yeah.